Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community Church. We are a welcoming congregation where we strive to transform ourselves and the world through love, wonder, and connection. My name is Eric Kraft, and I also serve on the nominating committee. Today we are connecting to our roots, tree roots that is, for a service about listening and nature. We hope you will join members and friends of the congregation next Saturday evening for the staged reading of Everything I Learned in Kindergarten. Check out the e-news for more information. After today's service, the men's group and the play rehearsal group are swapping the locations that are listed on the second page of our order of service today. Whether you are here for the first time or the 1,000th time, welcome. Whatever you are facing in your own life, welcome. This is a place where we try our best to be real with one another, to get through hard things together, and to remind ourselves and one another of the values that ground and center us, that motivate and move us. Whoever you are, whatever your faith journey, whomever you love, you are welcome here. We welcome all who seek to know the sacred and all who seek to make our world more just. Our commitment is to be together in covenant, so please join me in our affirmation of who this community is, beginning with that all-important word, love is the message of this church, and service is our way. This is our great covenant together, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Let's join in singing our opening hymn, Voice Still and Small, number 391 in our gray hardback hymnal. Please rise.
Sorry about that. You all may be seated. Our chalice lighting words are from an anonymous UU author, and Callahan will come and light our chalice. Yesterday, our distant ancestors gathered around a flame to share their stories and find comfort. Tomorrow, our descendants will gather around a flame talking of a life we will never know. But today, it is we who gather here around this flame, seeking, believing, being together. Please join me now in a time of prayer and meditation. Find a comfortable place for your body, however you need it to be in this moment. And notice your breathing as you try and find a center. Take a moment just to be, allowing stillness to settle in as we listen to the sounds around us. In this place, we are together to hold one another, to care when we are hurting, when our beloveds are hurting. And we extend that belovedness beyond these walls. Send your love and thoughts and care out into this world. We hold in our hearts Joan Hodges as she reaches the end of her life, entered hospice, and we hold Art and Cole, her immediate family, in this time. May we all know what it means to be held. Amen. So we come from every corner of this world together every Sunday in our separate lives and our separate homes, and we bring with us a variety of joys and sorrows, fears and hopes. We take the time in our service now to honor those big feelings together. We share it as a contemplative time, each of us given an opportunity to share what is in our hearts with the community. The light that lifts us up and the stones that weigh us down. Today we will light our candles and place our stones to hold up the joys and ease the weight of the sorrows. In a moment, I will invite folks to come forward, but first, if you're online, please put into the chat your name and the stone for a sorrow or candle for joy, and we will include those here. And if you're in the room and would like someone to put a stone or candle for you, first we'll start with the candle. Please raise your hand and Eric will place a candle for you. Kendall. And Gail. And if you are in the room and would like someone to place a stone for you, raise your hand. Thank you. Dorothy. 3 over here. We have Diane. John, and Tim. I now invite you to participate in the ritual as you are moved. If you would like to light a candle, come to this side. If you'd like to place a stone, come over here, and you can cross between the two. Hearts unspoken. And one final stone for all the sorrows that are still in our hearts today. Please join me in singing Find a Stillness, number 352 in the hardback hymnal.
Good morning. I'm Kendall Nordine. I am a seminarian at our beloved UU Seminary, Star King School for the Ministry out in Oakland, and I'm on the worship team. And today I'm going to read you the message for all ages. It's called, "To Whom Does the Land Belong?" Retold by Faye Mogensen from Ancient Stories for Modern Times, from both Muslim and Jewish traditions. Put these on. A farmer decided to adventure to a far-off land. Before he left, he found someone to look after his property for him while he was away. The caretaker could grow whatever crops they liked and keep the profit they made while the farmer was away. Finally, after a long time, the farmer returned. And when he arrived back home, he could see that the caretaker had done an incredible job. The fields were green and lush. Fruit hung heavy on the trees. He could hear the bleats and clucks of contented animals in the stable. The farm couldn't have been in better shape. The caretaker invited the farmer to tea, and they chatted, exchanging news and gossip. As their conversation grew to a close, the farmer thanked the caretaker heartily and asked, "Where will you go now?" "Go?" said the caretaker. "Where should I go? After all these years of care and labor, surely the land belongs to me." The farmer was perplexed. "How could it possibly belong to you? It's mine and always has been." The two men argued for a long time. Finally, the only thing they could agree on was to take their dispute to the wise person in the local village. What do you all think the wise person suggested? I hear share. What was that? Call the cops. One option, not a character in this story. What? Somebody else gives somebody what? A cat. Okay, Callahan, what are you saying? Oh, yes, one person thinks one way, the other person thinks the other way. Takes one day and the other day. Swapping days. See, people have answers. That would be a way of sharing it. The wise person listened carefully to each of their arguments. After a while, he said, "I suggest we consult a higher authority." Together, the three of them walked back to the farm. When they arrived, the wise man lay down on the ground and placed his ear to the earth. He lay there for a long time while the farmer and the caretaker looked at each other. Finally, the wise person stood up, brushed off the robe, and declared, "This land belongs to neither of you." "What?" cried the two men together. "The land has told me that you both belong to it." And saying this, he bowed his head in farewell and returned to the village. The two men looked at one another for a long time before returning to the farmhouse together, thinking deeply about the wise person's words. And with that, I think we get to sing Everyone to RE, right?
Please join me in our offering and acknowledging all the ways we give to this church and this world. We give because this is our church, and we value what it does for us, to us and through us, to our community and our world. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this church inside and outside our walls. May we give in love and in hope. Thank you for your offering and all the ways you give to our life and ministry with your time, talent, treasure, and trust. Together, our gifts allow us to expand and strengthen the tapestry of love, wonder, and connection that blesses this church and transforms us and our world. Our reading this morning is from Adam Odell, Musical Musings of the Month, Reflections from the Forest. I have nothing to say and I'm saying it. John Cage. I've had the great privilege of spending time in the quiet forests of Michigan's Upper Peninsula this month. This time away with family is one of my most treasured annual traditions. Canoe rides at dawn, walks through the near untouched woods, and cooking in a pie iron over an open flame help bring this city-dwelling, university program-hopping, ADHD-having composer to a bit of quiet and repose. It was in this relaxed state that I was reminded of the above quote from John Cage. I have nothing to say and I'm saying it. A controversial figure in 20th century music, he stuck screws and erasers between piano strings, performed a piece with household implements on national television, and wrote a piece composed entirely of silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. That silent piece, simply entitled 433, is a philosophical exercise where the audience is encouraged to listen to the world around them as intently as they might listen to a beloved piece penned by a legendary composer and performed by virtuoso musicians. As human beings, we like being in control more often than not. We like holding the proverbial microphone. Specific to us vocational musicians, it is quite literally our job to exact our will upon our sonic environments, selecting hymns and anthems, correcting our choir's vowel sounds, and using music to control the pace and mood of worship. Now, of course, the following pages are filled with suggestions of how to do exactly that, and an entire month of Cajun silence would raise more than a few eyebrows in our halls of worship. But this time of contemplation has me thinking about how my congregation might listen intently not only to my purposefully crafted work, but also to everything else. Sitting out in this cedar swamp, I'm perpetually awestruck by the incidental. I love listening to what may be out here. The rustling leaves as the wind whistles through the trees, the warning calls of a mother duck protecting her ducklings, the crackling fire fading into silence as the final ember is extinguished. There's something strangely calming in accepting that I may never write something as personally moving as the sounds of the world around me, unencumbered by my influence. It gets me wondering what I might hear if I gave my home surroundings the same unobtrusive attention. What do I lose when I don't treat the bird in the neighboring apartment in Chicago with the same intention as the ones hidden among Michigan's cedar trees? What do I miss when I only hear the mistakes in a performance and not the little idiosyncrasies that make it unique? How might I grow when I listen to someone who I don't quite know, confiding in me on a problem I don't quite understand?
Good morning. Throughout the month, we are going to be talking about the many meanings of the monthly theme, deep listening. As the last reading showed, we're talking about the sounds that are all around us today, both in nature and elsewhere. So last week, Reverend Sarah spoke about listening as a way to bring ourselves into greater connection with ourselves and with each other. And today we are listening about the interconnected web of life. I'm going to speak about a spiritual practice called a sound walk that may help with tuning into our environment. We hear a lot of sounds throughout our day. Some we actively choose, like listening to our favorite music, watching a TV show, but most sounds we have no control over, like birds chirping, cars passing by, or your neighbor's dog barking at the same squirrel for the 300th time this morning. Some of these sounds that we get passively we may enjoy, and some set our nerves on edge. Most of the time, we are all doing our best to ignore the sounds around us so as to function and not get annoyed with our soundscape. That shutting out of all the sounds happens without much conscious action. And it makes sense that we're blocking stuff out. The modern world doesn't really sound all that great. Cars blanket most of our soundscape with white noise if you're lucky, and brap-up-up-up-up if you're unlucky. And it makes it hard for us to hear softer sounds. So crickets, a distant church bell, your footsteps, all those sounds are kind of underneath the volume of the sounds of the modern world. You know, the cars, the refrigerator, everything that's plugged in and not. But what if we go intentionally seeking out interesting sounds, just like we seek out a great view for our eyes? Or can we find interesting sounds in and amongst the urban soundscape? So enter the sound walk. It's an intentional practice of deep listening. It doesn't even need to be a walk. If you would prefer not, it could be a sound sit. So basically, a couple questions to get you in the right mind frame. You can think about what the loudest sound you can hear is and what the quietest sound you can hear is. And just that little direction can cause you to be able to kind of catalog all the different sounds that you're hearing, which suddenly then you're not ignoring the things around you. You're kind of actively seeking out sounds, which is the goal. From the writings of the sound walk practitioner Hildegard Westerkamp, a sound walk is a listening exercise that helps us become aware of our immediate acoustic environment. It is also about the aesthetic pleasures of listening. Listening to sounds we might otherwise have missed, listening to the rhythm of sounds, listening for the unique voice of a place. It's about enjoying the sensual beauty and sheer surprise of sound. For all the skeptics out there saying, what's the point of sound walks or deep listening? I've got a couple reasons. It can be meditative. So some people don't do well with the take a deep breath, let it out, take a deep breath, let it out. They find that to not enter a meditative state easily that way. Another way is just by observing the soundscape around you, trying to catalog it. It can be extremely meditative. Another reason is a sense of connection to their surroundings, just by observing and noticing more things. All this is a preamble to saying, after the service, right after the service, because it sounds like there's a lot of meetings happening, I'll be leading a 5 to 10 minute sound walk on the grounds. If you're interested in joining, we'll meet right outside at the benches. So we're going to sing now, Meditation on Breathing. And we're going to do a little experiment. The lyrics are simple, and we're going to just see how many times it feels like we are going to sing the song. I don't know how many times it's going to be. I'm going to stand up while playing when I think that's the last time. So just keep singing it until you see me. All right, sound walk after the service.
I love that. That was great. Okay, great. It helps to open the actual sermon instead of something else. So, the story that Kendall shared with us earlier reminds us of an ongoing conflict in American culture. Who owns the land versus how do we nurture and protect the land because we belong to it and it belongs to all of us. In the story, we're asked to choose who owns the land, the person who paid the money for the land or the person who has worked the land for 20 years. Who owns the property versus who cares for it and makes it profitable. Maybe you had a strong opinion about who owns it, and maybe you shared that earlier with us. Or maybe you can see both sides. But as we often hear in folk stories, the guys needed to take their argument to a wise person, a neutral third party who could help settle this argument. So what does the wise person do? Really bizarre things. Lays down right on the ground. So strange. They put their ear to the ground and listen. They listen to the earth as if it has a voice, an opinion on the topic. It is the higher authority, after all. So how often do you stop and listen to nature, not just the birds singing outside your house or the rodents nesting in your eaves? But when was the last time you took yourself outside to hear the grasses shing? When was the last time you heard running water, not just from your tap, but the tinkle of a stream over stones, or the roar of a river crashing over a waterfall? When was the last time you heard a tree give voice to the wind, like an aspen quaking their leaves as the wind whooshes between them? I first heard this concept of trees giving voice to the wind from a kid's song called "I'm a Tree" from the Banana Slug String Band. But actually it was when Jamie was singing the lyrics for this song, really out of context, and he's saying, "I'm a tree, I give voice to the wind." And I was like, tree gives voice to the wind. I really listened to that message, listened to that image. Took me a minute to realize that he didn't create that himself, that he was just singing the song, but he certainly brought that wise message to me, because wind and trees don't make sound alone. They only make sounds when they're in relationship with each other or other creatures or structures or in relationship. The tree gives voice to the wind, and the wind gives voice to the tree, and they are interconnected. But somehow I had never thought of it that way before. I didn't have my deep listening ears open. In case you didn't catch it this time when Jonathan said, we are doing deep listening for the entire month this month. Last week we talked about spiritual practices and ways to connect to ourselves and each other. And this week we're listening to nature, to recognizing our place in the interconnected web of the world. And I hope those of you who are able will take Jonathan up on this offer to go walk and listen. Our grounds truly is a beautiful place to connect with nature. And more than just deeply listening to nature, we're listening for the purpose of finding our connections to others beyond ourselves. How we listen closely to the family that surrounds us in nature can reflect how we listen to others we're connected to. When you gaze at the stars, you connect to the ancestors who also gazed at those stars and felt like they were part of something vast. We'll explore that more in 2 weeks when I'm back in the pulpit, and we'll reflect on the wisdom of our beloved dead. But right now, we have a lot to learn from our companions on this planet. Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, what would it feel like to be part of a family that includes birches and beavers and butterflies? We'd be less lonely. We feel like we belonged, and we'd be smarter. Indigenous ways of knowing other species are recognized not only as a person or persons, but as teachers who can inspire us on how we might live, she says. We can learn a new solar economy from plants, medicines from mycelia, and architecture from the ants. By learning from other species, we might even learn humility, she says. Kimmerer is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. She's a member of the Potawatomi Nation and teaches her students about ecology and the wisdom of the natural world through the lens of her Indigenous heritage. And as we come up on Indigenous Peoples Day tomorrow, we can honor the lessons from this earth-based way of life. Every being on this planet, including the trees, the bear, and the people, are entwined in a way that makes the survival of us dependent on the survival of the smallest of us and the largest. Indigenous wisdom has spent many generations listening to the patterns of nature. The way the trees shared knowledge about the best time to have a bumper crop of walnuts or when to release their maple sap. We learn from the birds how the wind can carry us beyond a normal path, but it keeps us out of the way of the hurricane. We can learn about perseverance, about how to keep going when everything is destroyed. We learn that the leaves of the trees are meant to fall so they can rot, to give the tree's roots nutrition they need to have a healthy growth cycle in the next year. We are meant to decompose. Well, not really, but what we are meant to learn is there's no such thing as life without suffering. We sometimes think we've reached the end, but we get a chance to transform it into something new, a new beginning. The beginning of something transformed or steadfastly the same, but continuing because of the boost from that decomposing leaves of what you failed at. We learn from listening and participating in the cycles of life. We have a place in this cycle as much as any other member of the ecosystem, and we have learned how to participate in ways that get us what we need, but sometimes forget that what we need takes away from others. So do we belong to the land? Does the land belong to us? When colonizers came to this land way, way back, they claimed this land as belonging to their country, their monarch. It's a little baffling to imagine, actually, to consider how someone can own something that has a life of its own. How can we own and trade and sell something that has been living in this place far longer than we can even imagine? We can care for the land, care for the creatures that share it with us, but we can't truly own it because we need it far more than it needs us. We belong to the land. We belong to the earth, to the sky, the creatures that feed us and we feed, and we belong to the land. May we remember to listen to it, to honor it, and be one with it. Amen. I invite you, as you are willing or able, to rise in your body or in your spirit to sing our closing hymn, Do You Hear number 112 in the hardback gray hymnal. So rise up. I invite you to reach out to those around you. Be kind if others don't want to hold hands. Elbows are fine. Yeah, good. When you go, go knowing you belong to the land. When you go, go in peace. Salam and shalom.
Leave this place knowing that you are good and knowing that you are loved.
Blessed be. Take your dark and your light and your love from this place. Share them with the world and stay safe until we meet again. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy coffee hour and conversation and have a great week.